the links to join the channel here over at Subscribestar. So the short version of this is that while I think this movie is going to do worse than the first one, I did think it was a better movie, accepting that it is a bad movie. And once you accept that, yes, it's relatively a better, more nuanced, mature movie compared to the first one, which was really silly, way, way more for kids. That this is a better movie that's still unacceptably a bad movie. So Shazam Part 2, Diversity Killed Hollywood. They kind of painted themselves into a corner. There's just no way to turn what they're doing in Hollywood around. You're not going to see movies that look like they made sense like in the 80s where people kind of fit together hand in glove, like all the cogs were meshing together. Everything worked. It had some appearance of verisimilitude. All you're going to see is this kind of stuff. Uh, this kind of thing that's on screen. So there is when I say everything sucks now and is getting worse, I think now if you're paying attention to Hollywood, you're starting to believe me. Hollywood can't do anything that isn't woke cancer, and people just aren't into it. And when you talk to, if they're like, there's no point in saying this stuff on Twitter because I mean, it's so subjective. When you look at a movie like this, you go, oh, it felt like woke cancer to me. It seemed horrible. Don't pay for it if you know what I mean. And the woke commie kids, they get so triggered, they take it so personally. It's why it's fascinating. The start of Comicsgate was so fascinating to me because Richard Meyer was talking about comics, and he got such a insane, violent response about people started talking about him and his wife and his kids, and they want ideations of violence towards some 40-year-old guy sitting in a car with a cell phone, talking about comic books, and they were talking about his family and his kids, and you're like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? This is way, way, way out of line. I mean, you're discovering that there's a lot of mentally ill people in comics, but it was because he wasn't just talking about, he was just talking about comics, but they know that comics are not just comics, they're propaganda. They're all this Bolshevik narrative that they're pushing on the pages of comics. The same thing they're doing in comics, but at a bigger scale in movies. If you're looking at these two images, that, oh, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense if you're like a under, not even a tween yet, whatever those ages are. Like if you're under 9 and under, and you just want to look at, you're just a kid wants to look at CGI and pretty people on screen like shooting laser beams and stuff. Okay, yeah, it's a great movie for like the under 10-year-old crowd. And then over that, you start talking to the kids about like the history of the movies and the mythology it's based on. And the kids are like, wait a minute, why don't they have people who are kind of accurate to the storyline? It's like, well, then you have to explain Bolshevism and Hollywood and many, many other things that you're not going to explain on YouTube. But the Comicsgate thing with the Myers is so fascinating because like they know it's not just comics. They know there's a narrative underneath this. And when you say, oh, these movies are just woke cancer, they're not gonna. It's a subjective opinion about a movie. You can't counter argue that. It's like, oh, okay, I guess you're not gonna see it. Maybe I'll check it out for myself. Or the most you can say is, well, what? Like, flesh it out for me. Like, what specifically? Can you tell me a little bit more before I spend the $13 on the movie? Like, what didn't you like about it? And, if my views align with yours, I'm probably not gonna like it either. And I mean, it's easy to say it with Hollywood now because I don't think there's anything that's worth seeing. And I don't think there's anything that's worth seeing ever again in the theater. Honestly, I look at Hollywood and think like, oh yeah, I think it's over, like in totality. Maybe it's small micro budget stuff, but that's not going to come out on the big screen anyway. That's going to be like you're going to have to find that on other sort of like Odyssey and Bit Chute and like micro budget films or something. Um, but they attack you on Twitter when you say it's woke cancer because they don't have a counter argument to the movie. They might not have even seen it yet. They have a counter argument. They have to attack you personally, ad hominem to the man, or attack the words you're using, calling something woke, because they know these movies aren't just movies. They know there's deeper currents going on underneath these movies. They know the movies are propaganda. So I mean, like just these two images juxtaposed on screen, or I will say, like both actors did great jobs, but they weren't the right actors for the roles. They didn't fit the roles as good as they were, and they both did great. But it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and you can say that, and immediately they'll ad hom and call you, oh, you must be istophobic. And Hugo Boss says what? You call everyone that, and it's like it deflecting an ad hominem and personal attacks and straw man. It doesn't change the underlying argument, and it's important to have these discussions online. Otherwise, you just have to bring these ideas out in the public and go like this doesn't have the appearance of truth to it. This looks like some Hollywood diversity checklist. And you gotta to start moving the window to the right. You gotta start moving it to the right. There's no way to get around that. Anyway, so there is no cure for what Hollywood is doing. Nothing about Shazam makes sense, and as much as I like all the actors in it, and like everything makes sense about the movie except for the writing and the casting. It just looks like diversity thrown up on screen for 2 hours. People hate diversity, and the funny thing is, everyone hates it because everyone hates the outside group, especially right now with what everyone is going through. But Hollywood is a bunch of I'll I'll say bad people who are putting this kind of stuff in parasites in everything. English people. It doesn't matter what the plot globalists. It's just a group of purse puppies, vermin from a Mary Sue Central casting. They don't look like they belong together because obviously they don't. You just can't make these kind of propaganda movies when in the real world it's endless fighting between these groups, especially now with the events over the past 3 years. We've had enough of this kind of, like, we know that half everyone in this group would be burning down buildings in Antifa or BLM or something, and they'd be shooting at each other, and like the events of the past 3 years are very fresh on our minds. Like, these are the same idiots who'd be holding up signs about whatever, how much they hate each other. So we want movies that are an escape from the daily cultural Bolshevism. Instead, Hollywood doubles down. Hey, look, here's some story from Greek folklore, except it doesn't have any actual Greeks in it. Gosh, that's weird. Or an Italian story or a Polish story that has everything in it but Italian and Polish people. So in Shazam, you got these space god alien chicks. One of them was Lucy Liu. I don't remember the other two, who were played by Chinese, Mexican, and European actors. Why? How does that work? Nazi says what? Asking, whatever. I mean, these, if they couldn't make personal attacks and deflect, then they wouldn't be able to have arguments on social media. It's this participation trophy generation now that goes straight into social media, and they need human connections. Like, there is no curing this other than forming literal, like, homeschooling and literal separate neighborhoods free of internet, or a much just like North Korea has an intranet, I think. Because it's like, it's the cancer they're exposing people to. It's you just can't beat the government school propaganda in the 24/7 mainstream globalist media propaganda. The only way to beat it is to shut it off entirely. So humans are tribal. When they live together and make babies for 500 years, they become one people, a tribal connection of DNA and external morphology. It's called verisimilitude. It makes the suspension of disbelief a whole lot easier. I'm trying to find an image of the bad girls. Well, that's one of the chicks in it. That lady. I want to see three women who all look like sisters. One grows the thread, measures the thread, and cuts the thread. I forget the names of the three sisters from Greek mythology. It doesn't make any sense when you have a Chinese, Mexican, and European women who are all mixed together. How does that work? Just, if it's based on Greek mythology, I don't remember the comic book, but if it is, then use actual real Greek women, ethnically blood tribe Greek women. It's okay to tell their stories. Not everything has to be globalist Marxist propaganda. We just can't suspend disbelief that far because the bad people who write these movies and pick the cast think their audience is all NPCs, like they are on Twitter. So you got these two groups of people, the heroes versus the villains. And the heroes are all too diverse. It doesn't work. It would be funny. It would get you deleted in Hollywood. If I was making movies, here's what I would do. Like, you got the heroes are all this, random casting call in downtown LA, people from all over the world. But when they turn into superheroes, they say Shazam, they turn into these heroes. I would turn them all into these, Nordic, blonde hair, blue eyed European types. And just like, so wait, they turned to heroes? They turned into like these, yeah. Oh, that's weird. No. We want to get fair representation. So, like, the kids themselves, the orphanage kids are all from all over the world. But when they convert into heroes, they look more like they look more heroic from at least how the comic books portrayed them, or at least I'm thinking more of the Kirby, which is a different universe. But you get the idea. Just see how well that would go over in Hollywood. probably probably not well at all. Anyway, there's just too much of this kind of stuff. I see this cast of United Colors of Bennington 1990s advertisements, diversity, and I hope the dragon eats them all, and the next movie replaces them all with some English, German, and Nordic types. People in 80s movies used to be so beautiful. They look like they could have come off the ski slopes. Tall, blonde haired, blue, green eyed people are better, partially because they're rare. This is a truism that even the globalists can't get around. Gems are rare and sparkle. You can't make the commonplace rare and beautiful. It's just a function of the universe. It's one of the properties. Can we start getting movies that have people together who are not picked because they fit a diversity checklist? Put casts together that look like they're connected. These ladies are not that. You're gonna have to, if you want to make them all Chinese. I mean, it doesn't really make sense because I think the mythology. I think it's based off of Greek mythology. It's either Greek or Norse mythology. So those are your two groups you should be picking from. People who are ethnically of that tribe, not people that are not from that tribe. We get it, Hollywood. Like some of us see it. We know who you hate. So the globalists push this found family concept, and it's absolute cringe. You end up hating everyone on screen. I want to see a group of people that have something to fight for. You look at the Frankfurt School found family concept, and what are they fighting for? Chase Bank Schwab versus Zuckerberg's army of metahumans? Who cares? It's literally all Marxist subversion and filth. I hope all the characters mutually assure each other's destruction, then the directors and producers should all join in. There are no stakes with the bullshit found family concept. It's all just propaganda to get people away from the in-group preferences. So they're cut off and rootless. They make better sports balls, soy slop addicted cattle dead slaves who will follow any order that the Hollywood puppet masters tell them to. Oh, hey, CNN, MSNBC told us to be afraid for the past few years. And then the government's offering a solution to take that fear away, but they're just going to need to remove some rights. Oh, so if you make people away, you can remove rights? Or make people scared? It's like all it takes is fear? Why don't we just turn off the TV? So, no, don't have in-group preferences and never trust the government or the media. Oh, but they made me afraid, so now I have to trust them. But they're not trustworthy. They can't make you afraid because it's bad data in and it's garbage out. So they don't want you to have in-group preferences. Don't be exclusive. They need to control every aspect of your life, and they can do this most easily via mixed groups. This isn't just a movie review because these aren't just movies. This is pure propaganda. I remember when I was a kid and older people were trying to explain all the nonsense in movies so that I was always thinking about what was going on and not just accepting it. It didn't ruin the movie because it made my understanding so much broader, not just about mistakes in movies, about technical details, but how they portrayed the behavior of people. At a young age, you can start to notice that Hollywood very much has an anti-European bias and extreme hatred of people like you and me. And if the movies could be ruined by critical thinking, then they deserve to be ruined because they were just nothing more than Hollywood propaganda. Hey, let's watch Deliverance again. Oh, I feel like that's propaganda. Oh, yes. Yes, it is propaganda. How dare you? How dare you notice that? Once you start seeing it, you start to go rabbit hole splunking, and you see Hollywood for the inhuman monsters that they are. Honestly, I don't even think they're of this world. There's too much going on in the culture war that intrudes on this movie. In all seriousness, I was waiting for someone to tell me about their pronouns. Maybe they did. I wasn't paying the closest attention. I was watching it on a tablet through one of those online sites, if you know what I mean. The pronoun stuff is definitely on its way. And one of the purse puppies comes out of the closet or something. Nobody cares. It's a teenager who is 300 pounds. Doesn't anyone care about that aspect of it? That's much more important than somebody in a closet or something. Even within the movie scene, you got a 300-pound morbidly obese teenager who's got serious health issues associated with obesity. But keep in mind, he's not a CGI character. That's a real actor who's probably 25 years old, who's playing a 17-year-old who is the same morbidly obese person. When did people accept young people being over 300 pounds or even over 200 pounds at like he's anywhere in his 20s? That's insane that people are this like. There was at one time in history that he would have been the fattest person in a country to be that fat. Like you look at back at old pictures from like Chicago Fair from 1870, and it's like you see, oh, the world's fattest person, and you look at the person like, I see that guy. You can see that guy at any theme park in America. You can see that guy in any Walmart. It's not super common, but those people, that's what those scooters are for, to see it like a 300 pound plus man or woman nowadays. It's like they don't have those kind of shows anymore because you just go to any theme park and you see those people walking around. Anyway, so all this seems insane to me. I can't imagine what an 80-year-old who is watching this current this current historical cycle being repeated again is like if you're 80, 70, or 80, you're looking at this, you're like, ah, it seems like history is just repeating. You'd think you're in a world that was full of jokers in brightly colored Harlequin makeup. No, Harlequin's the costume, isn't it? Makeups, I don't know what they call the makeup, but you get the idea. I'm trying not to say the clown word because that's a for some reason those two that combinations of Joker Planet, is the synonyms for that is a dog whistle. I'm not exactly sure what it's a dog whistle to though. Anyway, so you got this group of diversity superheroes who are teamed up against the group of diversity villains. The audience hopes they just delete each other. The whole time I'm watching, I'm honestly feeling like, oh, I guess this whole genre is over. I think DC or Marvel, there's just been too many dog s movies for them to turn around because now we see how bad they are. They kind of taint the whole genre with garbage. Wonder Woman 1984 ended the series. Black Adam with The Rock ended that. Birds of Prey was horrible, and both Self Deletion Squads 1 and 2 were horrible, and that was Margot Robbie's been in two of those bombs. And that's just DC. Marvel's got a lot of garbage also, but I think they've hit this tipping point where there's so many bad films, there's just too many to get the fans back on their side. I think that is once there are too many bombs in a genre, then people see the whole genre as just silly Billy Kids movies. And no, yes, Marvel, DC, or Star Wars movies were kids friendly, but they weren't exclusive kids movies. They were more all ages. And that's a big difference, and that gets you the wider audience. They seem to be so silly now that they're just kind of for kids, and like not even teenagers, but for the under 12 crowd who just kind of wants to see CGI explosions on screen. And even this kind of stuff, like a bunch of women on screen, is not going to hold. Little boys don't want to see women on screen doing this kind of stuff. They see your mom and grandma doing this, like you just know how silly it is. It's like this is just not what your mom and grandma type of. And one of the refrains the SJWs on Twitter, like this just God, to see the left wing just completely turn into useful idiots for just the worst people on earth. Like, oh, so you're on the left wing and you're rage against the machine, but you're defending these billion-dollar companies because I used the word woke. Oh, now that you put it that way, it's kind of weird. Are we sure we're on the left anymore, or we're not just subverted, corrupted, useful idiots for these billionaires? I'm not so sure anymore. Hey, Bank of America sponsors our float, but they'll say something like, "Hey, for Star Wars, it's just space wizards, with laser beams and swords and stuff." And then you go like, "Okay, so could Luke Skywalker grab the sun out of the sky and throw it at Darth Vader?" And go, well, no, because it's not internally consistent with the rules of the universe of that story universe. It still has to have verisimilitude. You can't do things that they have not built up a foundation, which is one of the reasons why some of the Star Wars movies bombed the Disney ones, because they send the ship faster than light through another ship, and it's like, well, you would have been doing that the whole time. That doesn't make sense. Or now you have an issue with fuel in space. It's like, but there's like 6 other movies before that, and that wasn't an issue. Like you destroy you destroy your movies there because they're not internally consistent with what came before. And that, like the SJWs, you find them on Twitter so eager. All you have to do is say the word woke or this, kind of woke cancer. It's this anti-white nonsense, and they lose their freaking minds, and they bend over backwards to defend $1 billion industry. And they'll do this thing where, like, people will attack the SJWs will attack Elon Musk. And like, you don't have to be an Elon Musk fan, and I'm not, but you point out like, oh, some of the things you said are wrong. Here are the facts, and then they post the meme of attacking a billionaire and somebody jumping in front of that bullet to save the billionaire. It's like nobody cares about Elon Musk, or a lot of people don't. He's got some fans, but it's like you're saying something that's objectively wrong. Here are the facts, and they will do that for Disney or Warner Brothers or all these $1 billion companies where you say, oh, this is just woke anti-white cancer, and they will just bend over backwards to defend these $1 billion industries because they know it's not just comic books, which is why one Zach, whatever his name is, Myers, in his Kia, now he's a millionaire, but reviewing comics, like they know it's not just comic books. It's this whole narrative under the scene of comics or movies. It's this, like there was, Zach's videos go back 4 years, and honestly, I haven't listened to him in a long time, but there was so much he wasn't saying because he wanted to stay on YouTube. And then when you go read the comics for yourself, you go, whoa, actually, the rabbit hole goes much, much deeper. And to his credit, at least he introduced people to it. Like, he couldn't say so much on his channel and still stay on YouTube. But at least he brought it to your attention. Like, you go read those comics for yourself, you see it's actually worse than what his just his channel was doing. But, Anyway, so no, none of these movies and these comics are not just movies and comics. There's like, this is a movie like this image on screen and some of the other images I showed you. Like, when you just start to slow down and think about this, it's nothing but Pravda levels of propaganda. Um, anyway, so I actually did this video. Most videos are done once in one take. Obviously, no editing. It's like, yeah, we know that's nothing to brag about. This I actually did twice because the first version just had too many hot words in it with all those. I don't even want to repeat them, but you get the idea. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, support channel here. If you become a member for $1 a month, it gets you a name of color in the live streams and a star next to your name. Or over at Subscribestar, Odyssey, Rumble have these videos mirrored, and other videos. And then the Telegram is available, but it is a free speech zone, so don't go in there if you're a snowflake. It's like you're gonna hear, it's like just 4chan type of thing, which is very refreshing. Anyway, I'll see you guys all next episode.